Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm ranking every single card in Mythical Island, and I'm going to be ranking these on a tier list here. And yeah, let's just hop right in. Nothing too crazy to say here about these cards. Obviously, there's a bunch of cards, and it's the first mini set in Pokemon TCG Pocket. And I'm ranking these within context as well because I don't really know how I'd rank outside of context. What if there's theoretically a card of a type that doesn't necessarily have a lot of support that could be good, then I'll take that into consideration too. And also previous evolutions, I'm probably going to rank pretty low unless they add something to their decks. But for previous evolution, and I'm not ranking them within tiers, and for previous evolutions, don't worry too much about their rankings unless I really talk about them. With that with that with that out of the way, let's hop right in. And so we got execute. Also, I've played with and against. I played with a few of them. I haven't played with that many though. At the time of recording, the set's been out for like I don't know, not very long, like a day or something. So it'll be a little longer once you are watching this video, but still probably pretty new. And I played against a bunch of these though. I pretty much played. I played on the in against other people. I played the solo battles as well, and against other people. The most common deck I've been seeing is Celebi EX, but I don't necessarily think that's the best deck. At some point, I'm going to be ranking the top 10 cards from the set once I have a better idea of what's good. And yes, Celebi EX is good, but yeah, let's talk about Celebi EX first here, I guess. Celebi EX is the attacker, the I guess main one of the main attackers from the set, and its attack for Grass and colorless does 50 for each heads you flip, where you flip a coin for each energy attached to it. And you also have the other card, which is really meaningful, also Servine and Snivy. Nothing special about them, just going to pop them in F tier. Not that they're necessarily like unplayably bad or anything like that. They just don't do anything special, right? So I'll pop this in F tier as well. And then we also have the oh, this is also like a live tier list, which is why there's this stuff at the top. I guess I'll try to crop that off. And then Superior, which it has its ability Jungle Totem. For each grass energy attached to your grass Pokemon, it doubles the grass energy. This is yet again another form of energy acceleration, which accelerates to that type, right? It doesn't accelerate to colorless Pokemon or any other type, but it's pretty good. I don't think this card is it doesn't have great synergy with grass type. It has okay synergy with grass type. Celebi EX has not. It doesn't have synergy with the other grass type Pokemon except for Superior. They're clearly meant to be together. Generally, grass Pokemon are more setup based. Celebi EX is just a basic. You attach to it. You go second, attach 2 times, and it's kind of like Pikachu EX. It's fast, though it does build over time as well. So it's kind of like it's kind of like water with like Lapras EX or with Lapras or Articuno EX, cards like that where they kind of build. And Celebi EX is pretty solid. Interestingly, it is a card that allows you to get value out of attachments in the later parts of the game, in games that might happen to go on a while, especially if your opponent's playing a deck like Executor EX. I've been seeing that a bunch, or like Wheezing, decks that just don't deal a lot of damage and apply a lot of pressure. Those decks are going to have longer games, so you'll be able to build up more. And most decks can't take advantage of late game attachments. Like with Pikachu EX, you're only getting so much value. Power of Pikachu EX, another Pikachu EX, maybe Zapdos EX, and you do get some value out of those extra attachments. But with Celebi EX, you'll be guaranteed to get essentially as much value as you want through attachments, which is very nice. I think it's a good attacker. I'm debating between S tier and A tier. And I think Celebi EX is one of the most interesting cards in the set to talk about. I talked about its card design some as well, which I like in terms of like healthiness for the game. But I think I'm gonna say it's an S tier attacker. It's very solid. It's very like safe. And yeah, it just works very well and has natural synergy with the Superior. Ultimately, Superior has some form of synergy. Like Celebi doesn't really have synergy with the other grass decks. It's a good card, so you could put it in those decks, but ultimately it's a card that isn't necessarily gonna it gets kind of taking away attachments from something like Venusaur. I guess the synergy with Executor EX because you only need 1 energy on Executor. You can attach the rest to Celebi. But regardless, Superior has good synergy theoretically with Venusaur, but they're both stage 2s. I'm going to put this in A tier. It's kind of like Gardevoir. I think it's a little it seems worse than Gardevoir. I'm not sure if it's actually worse than Gardevoir if I'm just imagining this. You can't like split up the energies, but it's a pretty good card as well. Maybe 8 is undervaluing it, but it's not a card that can carry you by itself, and it's also a stage 2. Then there's the Execute, which opens up interesting opportunities with Executor. The different Executors we have. I think the new Executor is bad. I'm going to say that. I don't think it's completely terrible, but the Execute only has 50 HP, which isn't like the lowest in the game, but it is low, so it's like a power up attack, and the opportunities opens up with the Executor line. It just doesn't. Its low HP is a really massive issue in a line that's like the evolution, which is trying to be tanky. So I think Execute is okay. I mean, it's an okay Prevo. Probably gonna go in like C tier, as it does open up some cool options. And the Executor here will also go in C tier. It's not a terrible attacker. There's some pretty bad cards. C's like kind of sort of playable, but it's obviously not very good. So it can do big damage, but it's expensive, and the Execute can't power it up so well. And Superior, you don't really want to be messing with that if you're using Superior. Just attack with something else. Then we have Morlo, which I'll go in F tier. Nothing to say about that. Shinotic here, though, it's kind of like the Frostmoth. It's pretty similar, and it puts your opponents active to sleep. I think the Wigglytuff line's better. Sleep is kind of about slowing the game down. You want to put going with either more HP or a cheaper attack cost, which the Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff EX do way better. And the Frostmoth is a card that can be paired with Misty and could potentially be played in non-water decks. I think Shinotic isn't really usable or isn't useful in really any deck outside of maybe Venusaur EX. We are trying to set up behind it kind of instead of Lillian, but that seems super sketchy. I'm going to end up putting this one in D tier. Then we have Delmise, which is I think it's like it's kind of like the baby Celebi. It's not great, but it's okay. You can get some energy ramp out of Superior 2 attachments. You can be going and be okay there. It's kind of like how Mewtwo is in Mewtwo EX decks or Jinx or whatever, but it's more like Mewtwo in those decks. But I'm not a big fan of that. I'm going to put this in C tier as well. Actually, no, I'll put it in B tier. It's playable and is a card that can do some stuff on its own and threatens a little bit. No, I'll say C tier. Then we have Ponyta, which is the new best Ponyta. It's better than the other one. Nothing super special here. The Rapidash, I don't think is great. It's not very consistent. It can do 100, which is the most you can do with the Blaine stack. I mean, you'd be doing more when you play Blaines, but for base damage, it's the most. And so you could hit 130, which is nice. I guess it's not like a super relevant number, though. Actually, is it relevant at all? I can't think of any Pokemon with 130. I can think of Celebi EX, but you hit that for a weakness, so it doesn't matter. Regardless, Rapidash is an okay card. It's not great. I think the other Rapidash, it's like nice and consistent and low to the ground. This one's not that. I think this Rapidash is not a card I'd play, but it has a place in a deck that is played, so I think C tier is fine. B tier and A tier are probably what you're looking at for like more playable, and S tier is certainly very good. Magmar I think is playable. I'm not exactly sure where you'd put it in. It does discard the energies attached to it. Probably not all of them though. If you're powering it up with Moltres EX, I think it has a place there as a an attacker in that deck where you do 80, you discard 2 from it, which is its attack cost. Looking here at, let's do a Dark Mode as well. Let's look at Genetic Apex. The basic attackers, you have the other Magmar, you have like Heatmor. You don't really have anything great for basic attackers. I mean, Moltres EX is good, and Baby Moltres is like super swingy and / inconsistent, but Magmar I think is okay within Moltres EX. You could do some like Moltres EX Blaine box stuff. I think there's a place for this card. It's not super strong, but for 2 energy, you can be hitting 110 for these big swing attacks. Your 2 retreat cost is not like mitigated entirely by Leaf, but it's reduced. So mitigated by Leaf is nice. You can't do it at the same time as Blaine though, but I think Magmar is a B tier card. It's interesting to me. Larvesta is a generic Prevo here. I'm not going to be, as I said, talking about those. Volcarona, 80 snipe for 3, discard 2 fire from it. I think it was originally a little harsh talking about this card in my like first reaction. 80 snipe is solid. It's good against Curlia, but it's a little slow there probably. But I think Volcarona is an okay card. Kind of fulfilling a Scorch role, but Scorch hits a lot of damage. I think it's C tier. I probably wouldn't play it, but it does have like some value. I just like other options. I'm the Arcanine EX is better. Flareon might be better. I'm not sure. I haven't really seen anyone play Flareon. Then you have Ninetales is probably better. None of these are snipe attackers. Snipe attackers aren't necessarily like they're just not really a thing so much, but I think C tier is probably fair. It might end up being better if there are better Pokemon to snipe, but right now they just aren't. Um, then you have Salandit, which is interesting. If your points active is poison, it does 40 more, so that's 50. Um, plus the poison, so it's 60. It is colorless, is a fire type. Some interesting stuff going on with this Pokemon. Poison, there are a few different cards. I think Salandit, pairing it with Salazzle, which poisons, but that's a stage one. It's kind of backwards. I talked about this when these cards were first revealed, like yesterday. And I think that it's kind of weird. Like they've switched things up, which is strange. I don't mind them switching things up, but it makes them weaker. So Lazzle is pretty underwhelming. I'd almost definitely play the Rapidash over this. It hits essentially the same amount of damage. Salazzle could be a little more, but then Rapidash has Blaine, so I'll probably put this in D tier. But with Salandit, it doesn't really have great synergy with Salazzle, theoretically, because Grass is better than it was. Grass wasn't terrible. It's probably like I mean, it wasn't a top type. It was definitely below that. I don't know if Grass or Darkness is better or was better. Water, Lightning, Psychic, and what's the fourth type? Fire, yeah, those types were all the top four types. Then grass and darkness, and fighting, I think they're all okay. And dragon and metal are bad. They still are bad. They didn't really get new cards. There's one card collectively between those two types. And then Carlos has gotten some new stuff. Carlos is okay. I mean, it's a bit of a different type to talk about though. But regardless, grass is better now. I think it's joining the top tier of types. Maybe it's certainly in the top. Like it's probably comparable to something like maybe water right now. I'm not really sure exactly. I've been seeing so much grass. I don't think grass is the best type, but it's okay. So being able to hit that for weakness is kind of nice within a deck like coughing, with wheezing. You like set that up and can do some slanted stuff. I think there's some playableness to this card. I'll just leave it in C tier. It's really interesting. I want to see what Pokemon decides to do with the poison archetype. I think it is shaping up to be pretty interesting. I guess we've just seen a few cards, but it does look cool so far. Then Magikarp, obviously not great. Nothing really to say here. Gyarados EX though, really high HP. The new water Pokemon we have Vaporeon as well. Vaporeon is interesting. I don't think it like we need to talk about it with Gyarados EX necessarily though. Gyarados EX's stats are really strong. It's got high HP and high damage output as well. You would like to see it do 10 more to one-shot Mewtwo EX, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal, I don't think. But ultimately, the effect of the attack is like kind of bad. It's not like super. It's really weird. It's kind of. It's not really ever going to get you that much value, probably, and will probably just get rid of your own energy, which isn't the end of the world because you can just reattach. But regardless, Gyarados EX is high attack cost is obviously its biggest downside here. Its high retreat cost means you're not going to be like switching out with like Vaporeon combos and stuff. You could Vaporeon, like Starmie EX retreat into this and then Vaporeon to it. Vaporeon moves energy to from the bench to the active water energy from bench to water to active water Pokemon. It's all water stuff there. And Gyarados EX is a card which like could kind of get value, but probably not. Ultimately, it's kind of sketchy there, but you do have like your HP is so high, which seems really good for stage one, right? It's by far the highest HP on a stage one. And the other stage ones you have, well, it's only 20 more than Executor, but Executor is really tanky, but has low damage output. Though it does have healing, so maybe Executor is actually like arguably tankier. And then you have what, Arcanine, what are the other ones? Wigglytuff. I guess it's not as tanky as I thought. It's pretty tanky. It certainly has noticeably more HP than those, but it's not anything like absolutely. You'll struggle to one-shot it, but you can two-shot it, probably with like most things. But regardless, Gyarados EX's damage output's good. It's an okay card. I think it's definitely it has potential. At first, I thought it was really bad because it's attack cost, but you have Misty, right? That's the thing here. The Magikarp doesn't really do anything. It's like really bad. It's bad. But I think this card has potential. The regular Gyarados, the baby Gyarados doesn't really do much either. Um, I mean, it does something, but it doesn't. You don't really want to be playing them together. It does 100 for 4 and has a disruptive attack. Or am I miss? Yeah, 104 and then disrupts, discards an energy from your opponent's active. They're kind of related, but this one, yeah, the regular Gyarados does have 150 HP. You could probably toss it in. It's okay, but it's not like a cheaper attacker. It's not going to give you like something extra to do. I think this card I'm going to put in B tier. I was debating between B tier and A tier, and I think B tier is fair. We might see some better water support, but we probably won't. Like water has a lot of support right now. I don't think it's gonna get a ton more quickly. So I'm gonna just leave it in B tier. Being weak to lightning can't be good either. So I'll say B tier. Then the Vaporeon, this card's had a lot of talk, and I don't think it's great. I think it's you move water from bench to active, from water Pokemon to water Pokemon. So it's again completely water focused, like completely that type focused with energy acceleration, which is arguably kind of annoying because it means that dual type decks and colorless Pokemon aren't as good, which is kind of disappointing because I feel like there could be more things to add depth to the game, but certainly the new set has added depth. But Vaporeon, it's not a particularly good attacker, though it's not completely terrible. The evolutions are completely disjointed from one another, though there are two Vaporeons. The other one's okay, but ultimately you can only be running one of each if you're playing them both, so probably you're not really going to be able to do what you are, like, wanting to do. In that situation, you probably just won't get both Vaporeons and both Eevees. So I think Vaporeon is ultimately a card that it needs to be played within, like, it's good with Starmie EX because it has free retreat, and is theoretically good with like Leaf, and there are some cheaper attack or cheaper retreat costs, especially when you do pair it with like Leaf or X speed, with expensive attacks. So we can just go ahead, start with something weaker, build something stronger, and also preserve, like get hit, and then keep going, switch to something else, so that'll can also take a hit. But I think Vaporeon's a little too setup focused. It's a cool card, but I'll put it in B tier. I think it has potential, especially if we get increased consistency options in the future. Right now, I think it's actually worse than Gyarados DX, though. I'm going to put it in C tier. I think it's a cool card, but I don't think it's a super strong. Oh no, I'll say B tier. And then we got the Finneon, and we have Lumineon 50 Snipe for 2 water. This is interesting, another snipe Pokemon. I'm going to put it in C tier. Don't really want to talk too much about this one because we need to see how good snipe is in terms of the damage you're hitting. A lot of Pokemon have 60 HP, so you'll be a little short there, which is like a problem. And you do free retreat, which is cool. I don't hate this card. It's kind of like Starmie EX, less damage, but it's kind of like looks kind of like it with the retreat cost and the attack cost and some of the other stuff going on. But ultimately, I think just C tier is fine. We got Choodle and we got Dreadnought. Can disrupt. It's kind of like a baby Gyarados. It's a little cheaper, but it's weaker. I don't think this card is very good. I'm going to put it in D tier. It's kind of expensive, and for relatively low upside, if you do get heads and discard energy from your points active, it is good, but it's not like insane for its cost. I'd certainly rather be attacking with like Starmie EX or Articuno EX or Golduck or and honestly, the baby Vaporeon or the other Vaporeon, or like close, like I don't know, I don't really think this is a very good card here. And then we have Cramorant on a coin flip, can be immune. I do like this within like a Vaporeon box style deck where you can have this attacker that can like buy some time. It's also a 1 point Pokemon, but of course then it also might not buy time if you flipped out. So, and you flip on your turn, so which I think most of the flip attacks are. But so your opponent knows whether they can hit into it or not, and they can Sabrina around it. It's like it's not super amazing. I think this card is just gonna end up in C and has some potential, especially with Misty specifically, but it's not amazing. We have Pikachu. I've talked about this card a lot. We talked about the Joltik, but I think this is the best Pikachu. Certainly, you do have really high, or like higher than you have the 30 damage as opposed to 20 if you have a full bench. And ideally, you will have that within Pikachu EX. I think this card's good. I don't think it's like a game-breaking card. I'll just put it in B tier. I've talked about it enough in other videos. Raichu, this one's kind of cool. You have the other Raichu. I talked about like threat stuff, how you could be threatening Raichus even if you don't play them. And this is kind of cool. 20 snipe to each of your opponent's bench, or 20 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and 6 to the active for 3. This is expensive. If this was just 2 and was like weaker, I'd love this attack because you could just threaten just going straight from Pikachu Evolve, attach, and attack. Right now you need to like manually attach again, or like Lieutenant Surge, or something like that, and that's kind of awkward. So I think this Raichu is okay. The spread damage is kind of like the snipe damage on Zebstrika, but it's more broad. This is a more universal card. It has higher retreat. It's a mediocre stats Pokemon. Not a bad Pokemon by any means, but not a standout great one. I think it's okay within the Pikachu deck and gives it some more options. I'm not like originally I like this card a lot, but I think I'm gonna have to give it a C tier, like a lot of these other generic Pokemon. I think it's better than them, but these are playable as well. So I'll put it in C tier. You got Electabuzz, 40 Snipe for 2 Lightning. You got the Lieutenant Surge stuff going on, but it's not like great with this. This isn't that expensive. Lieutenant Surge is really good for powering up big burst attacks that are expensive, like the Raichu from Genetic Apex. But this Electabuzz, 40 Snipe for 2 is kind of interesting, but it's probably not good enough. I'll put it in C tier. Again, I think it is playable within Pikachu EX and gives you a little bit more depth, and you could do a Pikachu EX Lieutenant Surge box, excuse me, box style deck with like Pikachu's and Raichu's and Electabuzz and maybe even like Electrode or something like that. Well, there's no something like that. It's those 3, right? But yeah, I think C is fine as well. I know a lot of these are going in C tier, but they really are all okay. I'm really doing to see how good they end up being in the future as well. Then we have Joltik here, which does 30 for 1 on a basic here. And this card is nice, right? The 30 for 1 on basic, so I said what makes Pikachu really good. Then you have Joltik, which just has 40 HP though, which is bad. So how good is 30 for 1? I'm saying like Tyno's 30 for 1 is good, but it's only has 30 HP, which is a big downside. Joltik has 40. How good is this compared to the Pikachu? I think it's worse, but I think it has some potential. Joltik's a card that's really interested in me, and then you have the Galvantula as well, and you should talk about these together. Galvantula, for 2 lightning does 70, so it has the thing that I always said I wish Raichu did, where if it was 2 energy, that would be nice. It does more active damage and stops your points active from retreating. I actually think this is kind of scary, threatening to retreat lock your opponent, which can be really detrimental. It's obviously played with Arbok now, but Arboks that are played with like Wheezing or Pidgeot, and those aren't doing high damage quickly. Like they're just weaker attackers. I mean, they're not EXs like Pikachu EX, which is just so good. So ultimately, Galvantula could be pretty nice. Does lower HP than Arbok, does more damage, has lower retreat. I think Arbok's 2, I believe. And let me actually double check about Arbok's 2. So some different stats, but I think there's something with these two. I think Galvantula Joltik might be a viable way to play Pikachu EX, but it doesn't look amazing, especially because Joltik can be one-shotted by Farfetch. Farfetch can't be that bad for you. I mean, it is Lightning Weak, but um, it's really not good for the Joltik. So I think these are okay. I kind of put them in B tier. I think Pikachu EX is good. I don't think it's like now the other decks are developing more with this set. It's getting more options, which are maybe a little better than before. But I think it's between B and C tier yet again. I'll put them in B tier though. With these two, we've got Dedenne. I think Dedenne's pretty solid in Pikachu EX. I don't think it's amazing. I'm just going to put in B tier. Potential Paralysis is nice. It's disruptive, and it goes within Pikachu EX very nicely as a 1 energy attacker. If it fills a similar role to like Pikachu or Joltik or Zebstrika is like a 1 energy attacker, but it's a stage 1, just like the Blitzle in that deck as well, which are okay. Dedenne is definitely okay, and it's solid. Its damage output isn't very good, and it's not consistent, but it's a solid card. We got Mew. This is not very good. Nothing really to say about this card. Your opponent revealing their hand is like kind of fun, but it's mostly just gimmicky. So you're gonna put an F tier. Then we got Mew EX. Mew EX is also a big card here. I will say that the item card Mythical Slab does help you out some. It's not really. I mean, I guess it's here from UEX, but it's really good with Guard. But we'll talk about it when we talk about that card. But I think UEX is probably it's an S tier card. It allows you to counter certain attacks. It's really good against Mewtwo EX and Charizard EX. It's very good in Gardevoir. It's pretty good against Celebi EX. And it can be played in different decks as well. It's kind of threatening different things. You do need to play it really, I feel like, with a deck with some form of energy acceleration. It does not need to be the energy acceleration to Mew EX. It can be to other Pokemon. So you can spend your attachments on UEX, and I think that's fine. But ultimately, I think this card is S tier. I think it's very good. I think I might have overreacted to how good it was at first. I mean, we only saw a few cards, so I was like, well, this is the best of the cards we saw, so which it might not actually be now that I think about it. As I said, I will be doing a top like 10 list, I think, at some point. And yeah, maybe actually almost certainly be on that. But it's certainly strong, a little scary. As a main attacker, it can't really carry a deck, but it's a kind of counter meta card. I think S tier is pretty clearly where it should go, but it's not like a super broken card either. Oh yeah, Siglif. This card is interesting. I really like Meowth. I just want to preface by saying that I think Meowth is a good card for one colorless. You draw one, do 10. This is like the same thing. Meowth had 60 HP, was colorless. Siglif has 80 HP and is a psychic type card, which would be played in a psychic type deck up in Gardevoir with some like Mewtwo EX and Mew EX potentially. I've been playing this deck. This is the main deck I've been playing since the sets come out, and Siglif is good. You run into some like it's not great to just be tossing down random Pokemon. There are issues to playing this card, but I think it's very good. I don't think it's as good as it's not as versatile as Meowth. Obviously, it can't be put into other like Celebi or something like that, but it can be put into. It's really good in Psychic decks. I think it is a card I'd recommend you put a copy in your Mewtwo EX Gardevoir decks, but most people don't really. I mean, everyone has their different tastes, but I would recommend this card because it gives you increased consistency. It has higher HP than Meowth, so I really like it. It's not required. I feel like Meowth was almost required to get your Gardevoir up consistently in almost every game because there are times when you just completely whiff it. And if you whiffed it turn one, then you just whiff it the entire game. Siglif isn't going to help you get the Gardevoir as consistently in those like turn three attacks with Mewtwo EX, turn three going second. But it will allow you to have a more well-rounded game. So I think it's good, but I'll put it in B tier. It's only playable in one deck. And it's like okay for that deck. It's not ever going to be a build around card, but it is a really cool card. One that I would highly recommend. We got LGM and we got Bahiam. LGM here, Mind Jack for one psychic. It does 10 and 20 more for each opponent's bench Pokemon. So this is hitting up to 70. You need to kind of be aware of it. And force your opponent to not bench to avoid getting as much damage is really strong. If you view this as like 50 for one psychic, which I feel like is a pretty fair value for it, it's very efficient, right? It's not absolutely broken, but it's very efficient. Don't know exactly what you'd pair this with, but it is a pretty good card, I think. Um, it doesn't really have a home in the format right now. I wouldn't like play it in Mewtwo, like just the Psychic deck right now. I wouldn't play Behemoth in, so that does hurt it some. But I am gonna put this in. I almost want to say A tier. It feels kind of weird. I feel like A tier is reserved for very strong cards that are very strong in their own right. That can really like Behemoth isn't gonna last you the whole game. It might not even be good at all throughout the course of the game. But I think it is a pretty solid attack. We're going to put it in B tier here. Very different than the other B tier cards. Kind of like Vaporeon, maybe like Magmar Gyarados, where they're kind of good on their own, but not necessarily as strong within the format. Then we got Flabebe, which puts your opponent's actor to sleep. I mean, it's certainly solid. It's like worse than Jigglypuff, but as a prevo, it's a solid attack. So I guess it'll make it into D tier. It's like not that bad, but it's better than these and worse than Execute, so it'll go in D tier. And we got Floette, which is not very good. I feel like there's nothing really to say about this card. But Florges is bad. It's pretty bad. does 80 and it has 120. It's not very tanky. Its attack is not super cheap. I mean, it's not that expensive. It's relatively cheap, but it's not very good. 80 is not particularly great. It's solid for like a stage two single prize or a single point Pokemon. The healing though is like essentially useless. I feel like a lot of the time, unless you're up against another single point deck, which is doing very little damage. Because if they're hitting like 70 damage, then the healing doesn't matter. I mean, it could with like paired away the potion, but it's not great. And healing all your Pokemon isn't super useful. And Butterfree's a card which is very good. I think it's a pretty good card. Really good for tanky, stally decks, and this is not that. I'm gonna put it in D tier. I think this card is quite bad. Then we have Swirlix, and we have a Slurpuff. Slurpuff 60 for 2. This is a very generic card. It's not very good, unsurprisingly. We have Mankey, which is bad. I definitely recommend the other Mankey. Yeah, and then the Mankey from the promo. Primeape, 50 for 1 fighting, is pretty underwhelming. This isn't really like threatening much. The other Primeape obviously is pretty good. This one's not. It's less tanky. It's just not a very good card here, unfortunately. I'll put it in D tier. It is like kind of sort of playable, but it's not very good. Then we got Geodude. Geodude is Prevo. We got Graveler, which is also a Prevo, pretty generic stuff. There's like multiple Geodudes and Gravelers, I believe, as well. This Golem is a pretty interesting card. It is 4 fighting. You do have Onyx to accelerate to, or no, you do have Brock to accelerate to either Onyx or the Golem itself. Got high HP here, and you're a very tanky Pokemon, one of those tanky Pokemon in the game, and you're a single point Pokemon. Tankiness isn't super good, but especially with grass being like decent and highly played, especially. We'll see how highly played it is in like a week from now, but your attack's damage output is okay, but it's 4 energy on a stage 2. It could definitely be better, and the tankiness, the damage reduction is again also okay. There's a good chance you're getting two-shotted. It's a really fun card. I'll put it in C tier. Like theoretically it's fun, but realistically, unfortunately, it's probably pretty bad. But like, if you can get it to work, it's okay. Nah, it's going in D tier. I want to put it in C tier. It's cool. The D tier cards are pretty bad, but it's going in there. Aerodactyl EX is here. Also, I'm going to put Old Amber in F, I think. Like, it's not that bad. Maybe I'll just pop it into like C tier or something. It's not a new card. It's the only card in the set that's not new. Well, no, Mew's also not new, but Mew was like no one had Mew, so now you could actually get it. I mean, some people might have, but it was like an alternate art as well. And anyway, so Old Amber is like the Prevo to Aerodactyl. Yes, this is a fossil evolution, which is kind of awkward, kind of cool, opening up some different options with fossils. But I'm going to say this card is C, the Old Amber, just because I don't know. I mean, it's a B. It's okay. I don't know. Don't take too much. Don't think about this one too much. There's stuff to be said about fossils, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. But Aerodactyl, yes, solid 80 for 2 in stage 1, which is okay. Nice and consistent, I think. One retreat, weak to lightning is, I don't know, diversifying weakness within the type is good, I guess, but obviously lightning is pretty good. But you hit lightning for a weakness, it's kind of weird. But regardless, then you have Primeval Law. If this Pokemon's in play, your point's active, can evolve. This kind of really shut down some decks. If they are relying on evolving their active, not with like Gardevoir, which wants to be on the bench, or like some other Pokemon like Weezing or Greninja, which would want to be on the bench, or no, a Butterfree or Greninja, which would want to be evolved on the bench, then this doesn't really do anything against those. But against something like Weezing or Arbok, this is annoying. I mean, you should be beating those regardless because of the weakness and stuff like that. That just seems very good for you. But stopping them from evolving the active does hurt them. They do have some mobility with like Kogan stuff, so they could probably get into the active. I don't think this card's broken. I think it's pretty solid, like a good attacker. It's not like if this is your main attacker, it's not great. Fighting is getting better. It's getting there. I think I'm going to put this in A tier. We also have the Marshadow, which does 100 if one of your Pokemon is knocked out last turn, which seems interesting and pretty solid. Again, I think a pretty solid fighting attacker. Going to put it in A tier here. You do have low HP. Well, it's not that low. Low for a main attacker, but it's a basic 1-point Pokemon. It's not bad. And then it's pretty good, actually. And then as a... It's like a one of attacker probably. You could play 2 if you just want to draw into it, but probably attacking with it twice. But I'll say A tier. I think it is a pretty solid attacker and might end up like being a consistent force within fighting decks. I mean, 100 it's a bunch of damage for 2 energy on any Pokemon. Maybe not like a stage two. That's it's pretty for two. 100 for two on a stage two is pretty solid to be honest. And this is 100 for two on a basic, so its stat line's really good, but obviously only usable at certain points. And like your opponent could do like poison stuff. That's probably not happening, but the Stonejourner is kind of interesting. It's kind of like Onyx, except Onyx has Barak. They're different, but I think Stonejourner is a cool card. I'm gonna put it in C. I don't know. It doesn't really have too much it's doing right now, but it has like objectively high stats, which is theoretically cool. It's very high retreat, but it's kind of interesting. Then we have Coughing, which gets your other Coughings. I think this Coughing is probably the bad one. I'd play the other one, which is kind of weird. It's a weird card in terms of card design as well, but I'm going to put in the bottom tier. Wheezing here, Smokescreen, forcing your opponent to flip points with its attack. I think the other Wheezing's better. This one doesn't make particularly great use of Koga. It does threaten higher damage, which is cool, but it's not that much higher. The disruption factor is meaningful, but I don't think this card's that good. I'll put it in C tier. I think Weezing's a really cool, solid single point Pokemon, arguably the best in the game in terms of just like attackers, single point attackers, especially before this set came out, or maybe even with the set. But I'll put this in C. I think it has some potential, but I don't think it's great. We'll see exactly what Weezing's looking like once this set continues going on, like how good Mewtwo is and stuff like that. This isn't, I guess it's good against Mewtwo, but so is the regular Weezing in our box. So I think C tier. Nah, 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 I'm gonna put in D tier. I think it takes like you can't play two of the other Weezing then, which just seems really bad. Purrloin obviously gonna go in the bottom tier here, and same with the Liepard. Nothing really to say about this card at all. It's like super bland. So I think F tier is the only 1 point Pokemon going in F. That seems kind of brutal. I guess I put Slurpuff here. I'll put in D. I don't know. It's obviously not very good. Darkness isn't very good either, but I mean, Weezing is just way better than this. So, well, it does have one retreat, but I'll put it um, in F tier. There's really nothing interesting here. It's low damage and stuff like that. Um, yeah, then we have Venipede, and then we have the Whirlipede, which is 20 for one darkness and poisons. Then you have the Scolipede, and the Scolipede here does 120 if your points actors. It's the same attack as in Muck, exactly, except it's one less energy and on a stage 2 with more HP. I think this evolution line is really fun, not super great. Um, it has some potential though. It's like a solid attacker, but you need to kind of chain the two together. You might just get knocked out in the middle of that, which is bad. But you could pair it with a Weezing as well. I do like this more than Muck. Muck's not great. I'll put this in. I always want to say B tier. I feel like B tier is a little high. I'll put them in C tier. Um, I feel like honestly my rankings haven't been like super consistent, but whatever. No, I'll say B tier. I think it has some potential with the two. I'll put them together. They're kind of a package here. Then you've got Druddigon or Drudgeon. I don't know how to say this. And it has 100 HP, 2 retreat. It has an attack fire, water, colorless. It does 90. Which is like super awkward and really hard to pay. Like, what are you putting this in? And then you have Rough Skin, which says if it's in the active and hit by an attack, if it's damaged by an attack, then you do 20 in return to the attacking Pokemon, which is pretty solid damage. There's a Poliwrath with the same ability, but this is like very different. On a basic, it's kind of a wall. I played against this, I think, once or twice today, and it's kind of annoying. It's not super annoying. You kind of retreat out with a leaf. You probably really need to be playing it for that reason and just hide behind it, take some damage, hopefully not get like one-shotted while your opponent's maybe like setting up, trying to do their poke attacks, say like, oh, if you do your poke attacks, you'll get poked in return by Druddigon, and be powering up your bench Pokemon like a Mew-EX or whatever, Celebi-EX, some Pokemon that takes a couple of attachments, and if you attach to them, then you're not going to be doing some pressure to your opponent. So just say like, I'm sitting this here, and that's what I want to do, and wait. Your attack is super hard to use. Doing fire and water is obviously not really what you want to be doing. And you could never put this in like Dragonite. I think I actually saw it in a Dragonite deck, but excuse me. Sorry, my throat is bothering me. It's not great, right? It's a card. Its attack is like very sketchy, but I'll put this in B tier, a very playable card. I almost want to say A tier, um, but it's not really a card that's ever carrying your deck or a very good attacker. And if your opponent just gets a higher damage attacker, they'll just like one shot it, and its damage doesn't really matter. And it also does kind of get stuck in the active theoretically if you don't have the leaf. So I'll put in B tier. You got Pidgey, you got Pidgeotto, and then you have Pidgeot here, Pidgeot EX, which is 80, 20 more for each opponent's bench Pokemon, and this is solid. I surprisingly haven't played against this. Or I might have played against it in like the solo battle, but it's a card with decent damage, but not amazing. It's part of the Pidgeot line. The regular Pidgeot is a very solid card with its ability, but here you're able to have high HP to take some hits. I think it's an option within the Pidgeot decks, but the regular Pidgeot attacks with whatever you're pairing that with, and it's a bit of a threat. It's okay, but it's not a particularly great card. I'll put it in B tier here, I think. We have Tauros here, and Tauros is a card which is able to do 120 to an EX. It's okay. Pretty solid damage output. It's kind of like Mew EX, except like worse. Theoretically, like less upside, less HP. But honestly, it's an okay card, I guess. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much, but it seems okay. I'll just say B tier. Then we got Eevee, and then we have the Chatot here. Shuffle your hand to your deck, draw a card for each card in your opponent's hand. Actually seems kind of insane. I have not played this card yet, but I really want to try it out with like Greninja or something. I think this card's a really good draw card. Your opponent gets their hand kind of low, but you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards. I'm going to put this card in A tier. I might be crazy, but I think this card is very good. Your opponent can play their hand down and generally will be doing that. Is or like relatively early in the mid game, which is like the most important part of the game. So he's not going to be consistently drawing you like 4 cards, but it might be. I almost want to say S. I'm going to say S. I'm going to say that. And we have Pokemon Flute here. Put a basic from your opponent's discard onto their bench, and this is kind of cool for like getting Pokemon back. Good with like Pidgeot or with Sabrina or whatever. And so that's a good combo. But it's not like a great combo. If they have different basics on their bench, it doesn't matter. But Pokemon Flute allows you to do extra damage with Pidgeot EX or Behemoth or whatever. So that's okay, but nothing absolutely insane there either. I think this is an okay item, but I don't think it's great right away either. I'll just put it in B tier. Mythical Slab, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a Psychic, put it into your hand. If not, put it on the bottom. Is insane. I mean, this card is really good. Is it S tier? I think it is like a deck that just increases the consistency of the Gardevoir deck by a lot, because all your attackers are Psychic as well. I mean, theoretically, you could play like Farfetch'd or Kangaskhan, so don't. I'd highly recommend not doing that, because then you lose value off a Mythical Slab. You don't lose like absolutely absurd amounts, and in some ways, if you don't want to get those attackers, then you could say, oh, I'm going to play Mythical Slab and colorless attackers. But regardless, I think Mythical Slab is very good. It's an item that's a draw/consistency card. I was wondering if we'd see any of these in this set, and yeah, we see one, and it's very good for the deck it's played in, and it's going to elevate Mewtwo EX to another level. Yeah, I think I've been playing that deck a bunch, and it's very good with Mythical Slab. Mythical Slab increased consistency by a noticeable amount, a lot more than I was expecting. It's kind of like many professors of research almost. I mean, it's kind of weird. It thins your deck out because you're probably digging for the Gardevoir line, which is the most important part of the deck in the Mewtwo EX to get those early on, and it's very good. S tier, I think S tier is where it belongs. Budding Expeditioner, put your Mew EX and the active into your hand. I think this card's not very good. I think it's completely terrible. It does add a layer of depth to Mew EX, but ultimately it is a card that it just I don't know, like Mew EX is a lot of energy, and it's not that tanky. It just doesn't have very good synergy. It's not like Coughing, which is, yes, Mew EX have more HP than Coughing, but Coughing has synergies with its ability and with the support. It just has like really good synergy with it. Mach does not, right? But it's like kind of like Mach. Mew EX and Mach I think are more similar than Mew EX and Coughing, and Mach is terrible with with Koga. Like, you essentially never use it with that because you lose all your energy, and that's the same thing with Mew EX. There is energy acceleration, but I think this card is not great. I'll put it in B tier. Like, Mew EX is really good, and adding more versatility to Mew EX is good. So I think Mew EX, or I think Budding Expeditioner being in B is okay. I would have liked to see this card be something more interesting in the set, though. Yeah. Then we have Blue. During your opponent's next turn, all your Pokemon take 10 less damage from attacks to your opponent's Pokemon. This is kind of interesting. For like it's anti-Giovanni. I think this card is okay. I've talked about some before. I think it's pretty good. I'll just put in A tier. It's like a staple supporter or something. I really need to get my hands on this card and play with it. I think I probably have it, but I haven't really seen people play it. I haven't played it, but it could be really good. I don't know. But it's kind of reactionary and based on what's in your opponent's hand and stuff like that. Or I guess it causes your opponent to react. It's not reactionary. So I'm gonna put an A tier. I think it has potential to be very solid, but it's not like game breaking or anything. Leaf was a supporter I thought wasn't that good, but now I think it's good. I mean, it's good in Mewtwo EX, and I've been playing that, and it's good there. It's good like Executor EX, which is grass. So I've been seeing that some. With Celebi, not like that much, but some. And it's not amazing with Executor EX, but it's better than X Speed. And so in some decks, it's just better than X Speed. I actually play one Leaf, so I had to X Speed in my Mewtwo deck, and then I ended up switching both. I was like, they should both be Leaf, and I was like, oh, maybe play Sigilyph. You want to get Sigilyph turn one, so maybe I want to play X Speed. So I'm not sure. I think Leaf's better than X Speed in the deck, but ultimately, it's like Leaf isn't great in all these decks, but it's pretty good. I think it's probably A tier. I want to put an S tier, but I don't think it's an S tier. I'll just leave it in A tier. And this is the last card here. So here's my official tier list. Sorry that my voice has been kind of bad. I am. No, I'm just making out of one out, so I think that's probably why. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video. Also, check out down below. You can vote on this tier list for yourself if you want. And I'm excited to see what you vote as well.